Chinese Foreign Minister Wang has wrapped up his first official visit to South Korea in nearly 5 years, with both sides outlining new areas of cooperation while navigating differences over North Korea and regional security. And today we have our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Seong with us in the studio for an in-depth discussion. Welcome, Seong.
It's great to be here, Sejin.
So to start us off, can you tell us about the significance of Wang's visit and also his meeting with Foreign Minister Cho Hyun?
Well, I would say that the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang's visit really highlighted the momentum to fully restore bilateral ties as agreed by President Lee Jae-myung and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Gyeongju last November, as well as Beijing this January. It also marked the Chinese diplomat's first official visit to South Korea since September 2021 and his first face-to-face meeting with Foreign Minister Cho Hyun in 11 months. On bilateral relations, the ministers agreed to use next year's 35th anniversary of the start of bilateral relations to elevate their ties, focusing on services and investment negotiations, supply chain stability, people-to-people and cultural exchanges, even bringing pandas to Korea and preserving Korean independence movement sites in China. Cho also raised Ho's concerns over 2 Chinese aquaculture structures in the Korea-China Provincial Measure Zone in the West Sea and requested stronger protection for Korean citizens in China. Now, I'd say that these agreements are quite meaningful in showing the willingness to, again, fully restore bilateral ties. The reference to cultural exchanges is particularly notable. Since 2016, China has unofficially restricted Korean concerts, television programs, films and other cultural content following Seoul's decision to deploy the US THAAD missile defense system to the country. Beijing, of course, has never formally acknowledged imposing such restrictions, commonly known as the Korean wave ban, and the removal has remained unresolved for nearly a decade.
Right, and a lot of focus is on what still remains unresolved, particularly about North Korea. So can you tell us more about this?
You're exactly right, Sejin. So most of the media attention has very much been on the topic of North Korea, the language surrounding Pyongyang. In his opening remarks and throughout their meetings, Seoul's foreign minister referred to the need for denuclearization.
As much as President Lee Jae-myung presented a blueprint for peaceful coexistence on the Korean peninsula in his recent Liberation Day address, the government will continue working toward the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and the achievement of peace.
Both Cho and National Security Advisor Ri Sung-lak explained President Lee's proposed multilateral dialogue on ending the Korean War, but it seems that the matter was not further discussed. Wang spoke publicly about peace and stability without using the term denuclearization, just as he admitted it in his meeting with Foreign Minister Cho Hyun last year.
We also hope that South Korea and North Korea can gradually move along the path towards peace and coexistence, and sincerely wish for the continued stability and development of the Korean peninsula.
Speaking to reporters as he left the foreign ministry on Wednesday, Wang said renewed dialogue was a matter for the United States and North Korea to decide. He placed the onus very much on Washington, saying that it must change its long-standing hostile policy towards North Korea. Now, experts point to Pyongyang's stronger ties with Moscow as a factor affecting China's position.
China now has very limited room to act. A key reason is the growing importance of North Korea's relations with Russia.
In wanting to maintain some form of trilateral alignment among North Korea, China, and Russia, this is not necessarily disadvantageous for China in building a front against the US. Thus, China has no reason to step in directly and try to persuade North Korea.
There was also no mention of issues rooted in the broader US-China strategic rivalry, such as Taiwan and Seoul's security alignment with Washington and Tokyo, technology controls, as well as competing supply chain partnerships, and of course Korea and the US's defense and shipbuilding cooperation.
From China's perspective, Korea acquiring nuclear-powered submarines would erode the strategic and military advantage Beijing has enjoyed in Asia since the Second World War. This is also intertwined with stronger trilateral cooperation among Korea, the US, and Japan, which China strongly opposes.
So President Lee's meeting with Wang showed that both sides want to improve relations. So can you tell us what came from Thursday's meeting?
Sure. So President Lee said that his 2 meetings with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Gyeongju APEC meeting last November and their summit in Beijing 2 months later had brought about the full restoration of bilateral ties. He asked Wang to maintain close strategic communication with Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and National Security Advisor Ri Sung-lak on bilateral ties and the Korean peninsula. Now, Wang in return conveyed Xi's greetings and pledged to implement the agreements reached by the two leaders. The two sides also agreed to work towards another Yi-Xi summit during the APEC gathering in Shenzhen this November. So the next test will be whether this renewed communication produces any movement on North Korea. US President Donald Trump, of course, reportedly wants another meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as early as this autumn, with his expected trip to Shenzhen's APEC summit seen as one possible window. Now, as APEC's host, Xi would be in a position to discuss the issue directly with President Trump next month when he visits Washington, D.C., and potentially facilitate contact with Pyongyang by inviting Kim Jong-un. But of course, all of this now, at the current moment, remains a lot of speculation.
As always, it looks like we'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much for coming in today, Sarah.
Thanks ever so much for inviting me.